The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Michigan football recruiting is on a heater. Sharon Moore's killing it.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverine.
Huge news for Michigan. The hype started growing on Saturday with morning when Steve Wiltfong, we're going to have to deal with Zuri barking a lot this show. There's fireworks in the background and she loves those things. Which there's fireworks happening on this show. Oh, nice segue. I mean, it was one of those things where Steve Wiltfong, who is the best of the best out there, put in and I say that knowing Steve personally, by the way. He was instrumental in me being in this business. But he put in the prediction for Carter Meadows to end up choosing Michigan, much to the chagrin of those in Columbus who were so confident coming out of the official visit. Oh, they're going to spend money. It's a need. Why would you choose the team that's been cheating? Right? Okay. But alas, they did not win. Carter Meadows ends up shutting it down at 4 p.m. today, choosing Michigan. Yet another elite edge rusher, number 6 overall by On3, number 34 overall at 24/7 Sports. Just an absolute game-changing type of commitment. I haven't looked at, I know CBS does its own little thing, but where it does like commitment impact score. I guarantee this one will be considered game changer. Now, he is, for being a 5-star, still a little bit of a project, right? Like, he is not a plug and play. He's got some room to grow, right? He's 6 foot 6.5 and 225 pounds. So obviously he's got room to grow in that body. Now, he is more ready to go than like Lugard Adekpayi, who has kind of a similar body type, or at least he did at that time. But I think that there's a much higher ceiling for Carter Meadows. And it also helps to like, when you have some of the outstanding prospects that Michigan has out there, it helps to get those types of guys. And I'm not just talking about the other, I mean, there's others, especially in the DMV or in the surrounding region. Of course, we think of Savion Hyder, but like, now Michigan has 3 of the 4 from the picture, right? Like, that was the thing when people were coming out of Victor's Weekend. They had a 4 linemen in a picture with one who was committed, and Tariq Boney, and it was like, can they go 4 for 4? Well, now they've got 3 of 4. They've got, obviously, Boney was already committed. They added Titan Davis. Now they've got Carter Meadows, and then the other one is South Carolina native Julian Walker. Can they get him? I feel like that's trending in a very positive direction. That would give Michigan 4 edge rushers in the class. Obviously, Titan Davis is not an edge rusher. Mikhail Blade would be the other one that is in there. But they are just absolutely dominating when it comes to trench recruiting at this point. Now, yeah, you'd love to still see a little bit more from that. I don't want to say from the offensive side of the ball. You still want to see, because like it's still going to finish as like a class that's like you just salivate over. But it's kind of surprising that there aren't more that, like the Felix Ojos and the Kelvin Obot. I mean, they both visited, but it still feels like both will end elsewhere. It's kind of surprising, but nonetheless, to be able to get those types of edge rushers, to get a Carter Meadows, to go out and say, like, we're going to go get one of the best in the country. We're going to get a guy that is absolutely going to be a star here because we've got the track record of development. I mean, that's huge. Like, this was a conversation that I was having with I think it was my brother in metal, Michael Wolf, that I was talking about with this on Friday. The thing about Michigan is if you're, like we talked about Michigan being a little bit of a developmental program to some degree, but you don't want to stay in that world, right? Like, I know it's weird to say Michigan's a developmental program, But like there are the schools that have just long gotten the 5 stars, right? That's just what they do, right? Like and they've most of them have gone through bad periods as well, right? Like, Texas and Alabama have had down periods. Ohio State kind of hasn't, for going back to like the 1950s. I mean, aside from maybe like a disappointing year or two, Ohio State's just continued to be elite. But Michigan losses notwithstanding, of course. But Michigan's a little bit more developmental. That's why you see some classes that end up being more 15th to 20th. I'm not saying it's like they're not like Rutgers out there. But the thing is when you're in that spot, you don't want to stay there. What you want to do is be able to land guys like this. And then they also have to produce and become like those types of guys that everyone's talking about in the end, and go to the NFL, be a first round pick. And then you can kind of consistently get those top tier players, right? Like Ohio State was starting to get the wide receivers in the tail end of the 2010s, right? Like the latter half, but like they were still very much a running football team, but they still were they were really getting elite wide receivers, but they weren't as elite as the ones they're getting now. So that's what you do. You get to a place where it's like hey, we churn out defensive linemen, we churn out edge rushers. You're going to want to come here. We churn out defensive tackles. This is where you're going to want to come. If you're a 3-star, we're going to turn you into a first round pick. That's what we do. And then you start to get the higher end talent and then you just start to become a little bit more of a mainstay. That was kind of the problem with Michigan State. Michigan State's clearly a developmental program, right? And Mark D'Antonio started being able to get really good, started to really develop. But then when he started to have really good classes, they didn't come together. And that was where things started to fall down. Michigan's had some of that problem itself in the relatively early Jim Harbaugh era.
Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Ole Miss lands a massive commitment from Landon Barnes.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
We're going to talk to Dalen Flowers, who is from Texas. He is familiar with Duncanville, but the thing that just pops into my head over and over is Ole Miss with Isaiah Williams committing from the state of Florida, and Ole Miss with Landon Barnes committing from Duncanville High School in Texas. They have recreated what they had with Princely Amonmielen and Suntarine Perkins. That is a major thing. And here's Dalen Flowers. I was just talking about how they basically recreated the Princely Amonmielen and Suntarine Perkins in Isaiah Williams and Landon Barnes. This commitment is massive.
It is, man. It's absolutely huge. I love that comparison. One of my favorite things to watch this Ole Miss defense do was get in those third down situations and Sanitarian Perkins and Preston Mamiel and just rushing those edges and getting to the quarterback with ease. So that comparison is great between Landon and his counterpart out there in Florida. This is huge for Ole Miss. To out-battle Washington, Ohio State to get Landon Barnes is absolutely huge. And to see the rise of recruiting from the states of Texas and Florida is absolutely huge as well for Ole Miss. Pete Golden sat out what he wanted. These are guys that fit his scheme, that fit Randall Joyner's type of play style and what they want to do at Ole Miss and what makes them successful. And it's huge. It speaks to volumes of what Randall Joyner is able to do as a recruiter and what Pete Golden is also able to do as a recruiter. But this binds into what they've seen in terms of recruits and transfer guys into what Ole Miss has done over the last few years. This is not just a quick overnight thing. Pete Golding and Randall Joyner have developed something great in the front six at Ole Miss, and players now see they have the ability to come to this school and develop, be one of the best in the country, and as well make it to the NFL now. And that speaks volumes because this is a guy, Landon Barnes, coming from Duncanville High School. And if you're not familiar with Duncanville, Reginald Samples has developed one of the top high schools in Texas and in the country over the last decade. And even before Reginald was there, Duncanville was still known for being one of the best high schools in the country. They've developed some really five-star guys, guys that are in the NFL now. Keelan Russell, who is the freshman five-star quarterback at Alabama, was at Duncanville. A few different guys. Colin Simmons, who's a five-star at Texas as well. Duncanville's produced five-star talent guys over the years. And so Landon Barnes, four-star guy, 6'4", 245, absolutely huge to put on the map for Ole Miss. And as well, get the excitement and positive momentum moving forward for the 2026 recruiting class, because Ole Miss, this is just them getting started with these two commitments, and they're going to continue to build on what they already have and moving forward what they think they need to get to continue building for what 2026 can be for the future for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and this will not be it for Ole Miss this
Right.
week. This is going to be a very big week for Ole Miss, and it starts with an absolutely elite pass rusher. We had the Florida football scout, Brian Smith, the Locked On recruiting expert, on the show each and every week, and he basically said that Duncanville is probably one of the better, if not the best, program in high school football all across America. They have something going on there. They really do. Now, if you look at his rankings, just to prove that I am not making it up, he's rated as a top 100 recruit according to On3. He is rated number 195 according to 247, 242 according to ESPN, and 154 according to Rivals. I don't know what Rivals and On3 is going to look like tomorrow, but this ranking actually holds water. This is an elite pass rusher. One thing that is pretty interesting for this player is I don't know what to think about that stance. I mean, you see a lot of Princely and Mommy Ellen in his game, but that is a squat nose guard 4-point stance that he gets in on the side. I guess that's a Duncanville thing.
It is definitely. Duncanville has developed to be one of the more aggressive teams in the state of Texas, in the country. They have always had a reliant and dominant defensive line, guys that, are kind of old school type players that really just put their nose down and just get to the quarterback with ease and develop that type of aggression that builds the momentum and builds the ability for them to be great at the Division I level in college and then to be great in the NFL as well. I think this stance gives him the variety to do a lot of different things on the field as well. Like, he can play on the edge, as you're seeing him right here, but you can also move him in. You can play him in different positions on the defensive line. His ability to use his hands, as strong as they are, to kind of move defenders and get in the backfield and make those tackles on the quarterback or the running back in the backfield is going to be huge for Ole Miss. And Landon Barnes' big play ability is going to make Ole Miss something to be really watched out for in that defensive front in 2026.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I think about there's a bunch of kids that Ole Miss is going head-to-head with Ohio State for, and Ohio State versus the SEC, I'm not having that fight. They recruit really, really well, and they're going up against Ohio State for Deuce Geralds. They went up against him for Landon Barnes. There's a wide receiver from Indiana that they're going up against Ohio State. Whenever you are in that company to where Ohio State is in the recruiting stratosphere, it shows how far Ole Miss has grown, honestly.
Absolutely. It's one thing in today's game to just be, a good football team, but Ole Miss has now become a great product. This is a team that is social media eyes are on them, the fandom eyes are on them, recruits eyes are on Ole Miss at all times. People now know what the Ole Miss brand is about. This is a team that can develop guys, that can put them in the league, they can get great media deals, et cetera, et cetera. Ole Miss is now a national brand. This is not a 2.0 team anymore. This is not a below the shadows, franchise anymore. Ole Miss is here to stay and continue to develop with the top teams in the country. This is not something when Lane Kiffin signed on, 5 years ago, that he was like, this is going to be, one of the low tier places I'm going to come. This is going to be a second tier job. No, Ole Miss had the ability to be at the top with the best in the country. And he's able to do that with his staff, with his confidence, with his players, and he's able to produce those things. But, it's funny, going back to Pete Golding, when we got this guy a few years ago, it was the Alabama fan base that were so happy that Pete Golding was gone. And, Alabama fans were just so glad that Pete Golding was gone. And the things that he's been able to do since he's been in Oxford have just been remarkable. And the buy-in that he's been able to get from players, whether that's high school guys, transfer player guys that were still here before he was here, he has developed a great system. He has developed a great overall family oriented relationship with these players, and Randall Joyner as well. They just have great relationship with their players. Former players like Princely and Walter Nolan speak very highly about the two, and it really bends into what the player-coach relationship needs to be if you want to be a great recruiter at this level, which Ole Miss has done tremendously.
It's really interesting. This is the first time I've done a live stream since my surgery.
Mhm.
So if it's a little bit wonky and everything, I apologize for that. It will be better by the start of the season. But I wanted to do a live stream for this event because Randall Joyner is doing work in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just absolutely doing work. Pete Golding is leaning on the recruiters that are really good on his staff. Lane Kiffin has done a good job of putting together recruiters on this staff. And if you see with the Billy Glasscocks and all of the people from the state of Texas that are in the player personnel department, you had to get somebody in Duncanville. You had to get somebody from there.
Yeah, it speaks to volumes of what the understanding of this program is about now. I think when you're in the proximity of those schools, like Texas and Florida, where Mississippi currently is located, you have to attack those places. Even if you feel like you don't have the chance to get or compete with some of these other schools, you have to attack those places. But with the totality of simply winning, but also understanding the format, the formation, and having true development and consistency. You don't see too many guys nowadays, defensive line coaches, defensive coordinators being at schools for too long nowadays, whether that's they're going to another school, they're getting an opportunity to go to the NFL and coach. So seeing the consistency, the Pete Golding being here for a few years, Randall Joyner being here for a few years has really binded and developed the great relationship that they have to recruit guys from different states like Texas and Florida, but also build those relationships so they have guys from Texas, Florida, California, those other states. And then those relationships and other players see that from those areas, and they want to see what they can do at Ole Miss, how they can fit in Ole Miss, what's the Ole Miss relationship and family like, and it's huge. Randall Joyner has done a fantastic job at not only recruiting, but helping players buy into the product at Ole Miss, which is absolutely huge. I think Randall and Pete have developed a great relationship, and one of the things that has stood out to me, I don't know if you saw this, but the fireside chat that Pete Golding had with Chris Beard, if you haven't seen that, check it out, it was really great. But Pete said that he was really excited about the front six this year. He doesn't expect much of a drop off this year, and that speaks on the volumes of what they were able to do in the recruiting portal last year, what they were able to do in the recruiting portal this year, and what they're going to be able to do moving forward as well. Landon Barnes, do not underestimate this commitment to Ole Miss. This is absolutely huge for the future of Ole Miss, what Ole Miss is looking forward to do in the future, and what the plans they have in moving forward. Last year obviously was a undervalued year, and it did not go the way Ole Miss wanted. But this is still title town and title hopes for this coaching staff and for these players at Ole Miss. They have the mindset of winning a national championship, and they're going to continue developing, recruiting, and formatting their team around the players that they can fully adapt and develop in their system and have those reins to hopefully win a national championship in the near future.
King on the Throne, we'll talk about that in just a second in the third segment. So we will answer that. But first, do want to talk about recruiting for the first couple of segments is going on. The offense is going to change, but it's always going to be up tempo, by the way. Dalen, listen, the one recruit that is out there that Ole Miss fans should feel pretty good about, I think Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding feel good about, I think Randall Joyner feels good about, is Deuce Geralds. It's another Ole Miss versus Ohio State battle. But if Deuce Geralds was 3 inches taller, he'd be the number one player in America. That is how good he is. We saw him at the Under Armour All-American game. I saw him work out. I talked with the Florida football scout, Brian Smith, about it to him while he was going. And honestly, what they want to see in the All-Star games, I expect him to go to the Navy All-American Bowl this year, by the way. But what they want to see out of him is if a team runs gap scheme, a power with a pulling guard coming around, is he big enough to withstand that? I think Deuce Gerald's can do all that. He's an elite pass rusher. If he comes to Ole Miss with Landon Barnes, with Isaiah Williams, good luck trying to throw the football. It is pass rushers galore. But if Deuce Gerald's can stand up against the run, this might be the best defensive line class that Ole Miss has ever put together. Maybe Norman Hand and Tim Bowens, but overall, this is a top shelf freshman class.
Absolutely. It's definitely exciting to see us just be in the ranks with some of these guys. But Ohio State's struggling right now in terms of recruiting, especially on that defensive line. They've lost out on a couple guys over the last 3 weeks that, I think a lot of Ohio State fans felt strongly that they were going to come to Ohio State, end up going to different schools, and this now includes Landon Barnes. I think Gerald is a guy that has the qualities to be a first-round NFL pick. And I think, like you said, the size is something that a little bit of people have been questioned about, scouts and reporters as well. But I think when you put these guys up with great talent on their side, you saw it this year with Ole Miss, what Prince Diamamiano was able to do with Walter Nolan and Jared Ivey and JJ Pegues by his side. It builds the momentum and confidence for these players to be like, okay, my teammate's this good. He's working this hard. I want to work harder. I want to be better. I want to be as good as I possibly can be for myself, for my future, and for this team. So these guys being on the same page, hopefully with the commitment of Gerald, maybe soon for Ole Miss, it builds the confidence of the ability to develop these players, but as well, what Ole Miss truly can do with this staff, with these players as well, because this is huge for Ole Miss to understand that guys like this are now filling in the trenches for a team that I think a lot of people were kind of questionable. Can this defensive line be replicated of what we saw this past year? Can it happen again? It can. This is a team that it has the abilities to fill these holes. And you got to remember, when you're in this conference, when you play in the SEC, that trench is big, and that trench is the most important part of the team. And, Lane Kiffin, it was evident of that a couple years ago after the Georgia loss, that offensive line, defensive line, the trenches are huge. So to be able to compete as highly as Ole Miss is at this level, still on that defensive line and those trenches, is absolutely huge for the Rebels.
All right, when we come back, we'll get into the comment section, see if there's any good questions there. Just ask some random stuff before we get out of here. But Ole Miss got a commitment from elite pass rusher Landon Barnes from Duncanville High School in Texas. That is absolutely big.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Indiana basketball picks up their first commit in the class of 2026.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We've got breaking news that happened late Friday afternoon into Friday evening as Indiana basketball picks up their first verbal commit in the class of 2026 under new head coach Darren DeVries, and it is Prince Alexander Moody, a guy that we have talked a ton about on this show and on this program, someone who I think the rankings don't reflect how good this kid really is. He commits to the Hoosiers late Friday evening, and he is now the first commit for Indiana in the class of 2026. And folks, I'm so excited about this. I know we were bummed on missing out on Sammy Jackson, who, of course, picked VCU earlier in the week over the likes of Indiana, Texas, and St. Joe's. And I've been telling you that I feel comfortable. I have felt confident that a commit was coming in the month of June. We came down to the last couple of days, but we still got it done here in the month of June as Prince Alexander Moody picks the Indiana Hoosiers and head coach Darren DeVries. His comments about Indiana are incredible. We've read off some of them after his visit. He kind of updated some things, and then he's got some quotes out there about why he chose the Hoosiers. And he basically says that's the relationship that Indiana created with him. It's the fact that Darren DeVries and his staff talk to him constantly. They talk every day. They reach out. They tell him and have been telling Prince Alexander Moody just how bad they wanted him in Bloomington. And he talks about how they have talked about the vision and how he wants to be there and how he really does like what Indiana is building with the new head coach and the new staff. And so you add your first commit to the class of 2026. Prince Alexander Moody is a 4-star, right? This is the kid from Maryland, 6'4", 180 pounds, the guard who can play the 2, but has started to play the point guard spot in the last couple of years. And I think he can play either one at the next level. I've talked about how this is someone Indiana absolutely wanted. He fits in DeVries' system perfectly. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But here you go. Now you win a recruiting battle. You had Maryland in there and Michigan State. Illinois even had an offer into this kid as well. And he decides to pick the Indiana Hoosiers. And so that takes a little bit of stress, I think, off of Darren DeVries, off the staff, and maybe a little pressure off too, right? I mean, as Indiana fans, we have to be excited about this. The fact a big time commit, and I will not stand for anybody that says, oh, he's ranked 120 something in the rankings and he's only a 4-star. He can't be that good. Let's not get that excited. Let's not overhype this. I promise you I'm not. This dude is legit. He looks and feels like a college power 4 guard who has NBA potential. I truly believe that when you turn on the film, that's how good Prince Alexander Moody is to me. Again, 6'4", 180 pounds. He'll put on a couple of more pounds when he gets to college of just pure muscle. And what he's able to do on the floor in terms of just orchestrating the offense and getting to the rack and shooting it from the outside and just making his team better, that's what Indiana needs moving forward into the future. Because let's be real, we don't really know what the guard room's going to look like this time next year, because some of these transfers you brought in are basically 1-year rentals. And so you're looking for somebody like Moody, who I do think has starting potential, starting caliber. You bring him in and you begin to build your class around somebody like this, which is what I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. And so I'm glad that this staff is able to get somebody like this to kickstart the recruiting class, because let's be real, the Hoosiers are not done. It's going to be a good class, and Indiana's going after kids ranked in the hundreds and the 70s and the 50s and the teens and in the top 10. Indiana is going after the best players available, but also ones that they feel, or I guess Darren DeVries feels, are best for his system. And I'm telling you, Prince Alexander Moody checks all of those boxes. But I just continue to go back to this idea that you miss out on Sammy Jackson. Yes, you started 0-1, but here you are. You're back to 500. You're back to 1-1. You get your first big-time commit, and everybody should be excited about this. And I think Prince Alexander Moody is the real deal. He's the first commitment for you in the class of 2026. No reason to be looking at team rankings and things right now. It's way too early to try and decide where that is or take any sort of credibility or anything like that in terms of a team ranking in the 2026 class, because again, Indiana is going to add several more players, but we hope for this to be a domino effect, right? We hope for this to become more and lead to more, and other people and other guys say, hey man, we want to go play there too. We believe in this short amount of time already in what Indiana's building, and hopefully Prince Alexander Moody is a guy that will kind of help recruit Indiana, right? Kind of be out there texting and talking and calling and things to all these other big time commits, or these other big time recruits, I should say, and be like, hey man, come with me. Come be a part of something special at Indiana. I think you could get that out of Prince Alexander Moody, and I'm very excited about the 4-star guard who has committed to play for the Indiana Hoosiers. Prince Alexander Moody has committed to play for the Indiana Hoosiers, the first commit in the class of 2026, a 4-star who is a really, really good guard, who I think the rankings are disrespecting quite a bit. I've said several times, and I'm still scratching my head, on how he dropped in the rankings or why he dropped in the rankings. Because if you go back and I forget which episode it was that we did a real deep dive on Prince Alexander Moody, the skill set that this kid has is truly incredible. I mean, he's somebody who can take over a game. He's somebody that you trust with the basketball in his hands. And when you need a bucket, I go to this guy. I give it to Prince Alexander Moody.